Welcome to the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast, powered by the Precision Metal Forming Association. It is my distinct pleasure today to have with me Sonny Hahn, who is the founder and CEO at Fulcrum. Welcome, son.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
It is great to have you. So, right off, I always like to ask everybody, what is your destiny of manufacturing or your perspective of the next 5 years for the industries?
I think there's going to be a lot of change. It's hard to tell in what order that change is going to happen in, but when I first started learning about manufacturing, almost 20 years ago now, I always thought that I missed out on the really cool period of when machines started to become a lot more automated, when we added computer controls to things, when we started to really understand geometries and how to make them into reality with different types of tooling. But I think we're entering into a new era of rapid change. I think a lot of people forget that manufacturers were the first group of people really to add databases to their businesses, and the first group of people really to add computerized controls to their equipment. I think there's this maybe reputation or thought that manufacturers are actually laggards or they're not really early adopters. But in general, in a wholesale, deep kind of a way, it's always been evolve, innovate, or die. Like you just do not see people right now that have outdated equipment or aren't managing their businesses in an automated way. Like that's just not going to happen, and you can still survive and thrive as a shop. So I actually think that we're seeing in the marketplace a little bit of a delay, a little bit of a wait and see what this technology does. But once there's actually well understood applications, you're going to see a fire sale of people rushing to really automate different parts of their business in a way that no other industry is really doing right now. So.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that we've had this kind of perspective that. So I started in kind of in computers back in the 80s when things were just kind of getting going, learning it on a Sinclair tactile keyboard and then moving to Apple IIe's and things like that, and even on the TRS 80s and things like that. And I thought at that time that that was the heyday of where computers could go in manufacturing and how we could use them. But looking at where we are today, it is very different. We have a very different level of where we're taking technology. I think the industry 4.0 stuff is really intriguing in how we gather data, but then what do we do with that data is an interesting aspect. How do you see like AI being utilized for those kinds of aspects?
I think the way that technology has advanced in manufacturing has always been in a bit of a tick-tock fashion. Like one motion has always been the mechanical muscles. The machines get better. They're the
Mm-hmm.
throughput. You buy a higher kilowatt power laser, powered laser, and you have more throughput. You're able to cut thicker plate. You're able to do all sorts of different things. You have automatic tool changing, all these different innovations to the mechanical muscles that are on the shop floor. They increase throughput, increase throughput, increase throughput. Well, at some point in time, the machines are no longer the bottleneck. There's just materials waiting around. You don't know what to price things. There's quotes piling up. There's decisions to be made. You don't know how to schedule them, how to run them, where to run them. You have engineering backlog. You have quality management. Like all these other things start to become the bottleneck of the particular shop. I think actually, much to a lot of the machine tool manufacturers' chagrin, we've been in a kind of a lull for the last like 5 or 6 or 7 years where it used to be make the laser better and you're going to sell more of them. Make the press better, you're going to sell more of them. And we really haven't seen that. And we haven't seen that because the throughput bottleneck has more and more and more been the mechanical mind, the intelligence decision making. And we've gone through multiple iterations. We used to have just shop floor foremen that would tell people what to do. And then we had
Mm-hmm.
like pre-fabbed paper, basically, travelers and things like that. We don't think of that as software, but it really kind of is. It's a way to provide structure with something that we pre-plan. And then we had another kind of wave of software innovation of databases, put everything into a database, pull reports out. And then we had another kind of wave of, like you said, sensors and collecting data and having data intelligence. Well, now we're able to do a lot more. We're able to take the reading of drawings, the data entry from email, the um, making of decisions, the all of these things are able to happen. 5 years ago, we launched an AI scheduler. It automatically looks at all of the stuff that's going on the shop floor. And as we fed it better data and fed it better data, the scheduler got better and better and better. We had an AI purchasing planning. Now the technology is so much better, so much more capable. We're able to read emails automatically from our customers and put them right into the system. We're able to read drawings and pull dimensionality and words and tolerances off of it. We're able to understand um, how to respond to an email or how to respond to a quote, not with a price, but with a capacity. Is this the right time for us to take this particular order? Can I even respond to this particular set of releases on a blanket? All of these things are things that are actually really difficult for us to solve as humans without a lot of work. And is really not the most important parts of our job, but they're consuming a larger and larger and larger percentage of our day. What we're seeing with the companies that are really adopting even this early inning capability of AI is that the job is intensifying for every one of their employees. They're doing a lot more of the really valuable stuff of their job, the making decisions, the understanding relationships, the talking to customers, the maintaining and understanding of how to do something, the collection of tribal knowledge and the documentation of it. Those are really important things. And they're doing less of the high cost fluff that kind of gets in between stuff. So I think right now already we're seeing this technology really intensify jobs towards the rich, really important parts of it. It's not really killing any jobs. It's just making the jobs more valuable. I think in the
Hmm.
future, what we're going to see is we're going to see this extend outside of the shop, connecting to your customers, connecting to your vendors, connecting to your outside processors. All those connections are places where people put another 2 week buffer. All those places are places where we add another, 30 or 40% of margin, or every single time we do that, there's a lot of communication. Well, imagine if all that communication starts getting automated a lot more, we might see just this incredible improvement to the overall supply chain. There's just going to be more work that floods the market because we don't have this coordination tax of dealing with each other in that way. And then I think really long term, the experience of most shop floor owners and employees are going to be completely different. It's going to be like building the factory and reorganizing it and deciding what equipment to put where and measuring things. It's going to be, in my opinion, a lot more fun. You're going to be kind of playing a much more high scaled, high abstraction game of how do I make the very best shop possible.
Right. Yeah, I like that perspective. I think that years ago I had this idea of creating a game that was focused around smarter decisions within a shop. Where do I put my machine? Am I going to build line manufacturing or am I going to build cellular manufacturing? What is the throughput? And basically, depending on your decisions, you have pluses and minuses. And you could see that errors could compound when you make bad decisions. If I'm referencing off the same of a machined area, if it's not square, that tolerance builds up across the whole area if that's what I'm referencing to. So
Exactly.
I had that idea, and I think that we are in a modern real world version of that because we can use smarter information in that. So how did you get involved in this?
I mean, computers have been a part of my life since I was a kid. My mom was a computer science major. I was 5, 6 years old when she was in school, and we had a computer in the bedroom. When I was 4 or 5 years old, we lived in a one bedroom. Both my parents were in grad school, so we had no money. So my parents and I shared a bedroom, and at the foot of my bed was an old IBM Tandy machine that was running DOS, and learned how to write little games in BASIC. I'd played a game, and we had no money to buy games, but I was at her computer lab, and I played this game called it was just Snake. It was I don't know if you've ever played it. It was just a little snake that when you eat a little dot, the snake gets a little bit longer, et cetera, et cetera. And I tried to recreate it for myself, really slowly, really poorly. But that was my first kind of like playing around with computers. And then once one of her colleagues saw me do stuff like that, I showed it to him in the computer lab. He taught me C and C++ and gave me a lot more knowledge about how to really think about these systems. But I've never actually been an engineer. I've just been good at math. I've been really deep into math for a long period of time. I really have a deep hobbyist, if you will, mentality towards computers and software. I've written websites, small little products for myself. Um,
Mhm.
but that's been a through line through my entire life. The manufacturing angle kind of came in 15 years ago when my career first started. I was working with smaller businesses, and manufacturing was a really big part of that. And so the joining of the two was when I started the business about 11 years ago to build software on top of existing systems. That's where I really started to kind of mash together these two otherwise separate through lines of my life. And that's been my life for the last 11 years is how do we apply technology to this industry? I've been extremely committed and a deep believer that a large decentralized network of manufacturers, hundreds of thousands of smaller, 5 to $100 million shops, that's really what's good for the economy, for manufacturing in general, because it allows for larger OEMs to choose a different methodology of manufacturing without having to rebuy all this equipment and things like that. It allows for us to be really nimble and agile. And the history of our country has been this type of manufacturing. We're able to retool to make planes and tanks during World War II, and then we went back to making cars. Like there's a lot of magic in it, but yeah, I've been applying the most modern technologies to this industry for over a decade now. It started with just putting things on the internet and showing people how amazing it is to be on vacation in Mexico and have an emergency and pull up your laptop and just be able to solve it. That's obviously like kind of like status quo today, but even 10 years ago, that was like magic for some folks. And then we were really early at applying early AI systems into scheduling, and now pretty early into applying these new transformer-based technologies into manufacturing too.
That's great. Now, Sonny, do you feel like when you started that foundational element of being able to write code, problem solve that code and make it better, how do you feel that impacted you today?
So there's two concepts that I learned from one of my best friends. He worked at Google a long time ago. Really, he was not super early, but earlier on at Google. And he gave me these two ideas that I think have really infected me in a really productive way. The first is that as an organization grows, you never get one-to-one improvement in productivity. As you increase the number of people in your shop or in your business, you get this diminished returns curve that looks like a square root of n. So as you add one more employee, you get a square root of that number of more productivity. And the tax is the coordination. The more people you have, the more meetings you have, the more statuses, the more documents you have to write, right? If it's just three guys, one person's quoting and two people are operating machines, you can just yell and see what's going on in the shop floor. You see what's on the shelf. You don't need to coordinate that much. Well, now if you're a 100-person shop, you have different groups. You have a press break group. You have a laser group. You have an engineering group. Like everyone has to talk with each other. You have a production meeting. You have all these different meetings. And all of a sudden, a third of your day is like eaten up on just coordinating between different people. And
Hmm.
so that that concept has really been really useful for how we've scaled our own business, but also most importantly, thinking about what's important to our customers and their businesses. If we can even bend that curve up a little bit and give you the ability to feel like you're a 20-person shop when you're 100 people, or give you the productivity of a 1,000-person shop when you're 200 people, that's a pretty big force multiplier. And then the second idea that he gave me was that the ideal person is the person that can use the product, that can build the product, that can design the best user interface, that understands all the business concepts of how much you can sell it for and what the value is and all these other different things, and can also communicate that idea really clearly and simply and market it both internally and externally. Because if you have all that information, you can form a full loop before you have to involve anyone else into it. And if you specialize, if you have someone that understands software and understands design and someone that understands business and someone that understands marketing, you kind of have to you do your part and then you hand it off to somebody else and you have all these meetings and there's just this coordination inefficiency even within incubating an idea. So even though I'm not an engineer, I'm not a designer, I don't have any of these attributes, I don't play any of the instruments, if you will, knowing how all of them are played at a really deep level allows me to coordinate it into a symphony that I think hopefully if I do my job right is greater than the sum of its parts. So I think that's my job, is that I need to understand business really deeply. I need to understand what sells, what margins are, how to make money, how to make people feel good paying you money, how to translate that into margins that we can then invest, how much of it to invest, how much of it to save away, how much of it to hire people with, et cetera, et cetera. I need to be able to recruit the very best engineers and talent. I need to be able to get investors to understand the vision and the long-term mission, and as well as customers and employees. I need to understand design and user interfaces and how that changes with AI. I need to understand foundation models and how they're built up, and matrix multiplication and how they're fine-tuned with specific silicon architecture. I need to understand the software that goes with it, how much of it is classical software versus AI software, how to integrate these things together, and evaluation loops. And if I understand all those things deeply enough to make sure I don't get my decisions into trouble, I might not be able
Hmm.
to execute it at the very high level, but at least I'm able to look in the right spaces. Then I can make the full journey all the way through and come up with breathtakingly amazing ideas on how to coordinate all these concepts together. So yes, I think that having that
Yeah.
foundation knowledge, not just in the technology, but every other place in how sheet metal shops work, and what does it mean that you're making all this data center stuff, and what does it mean you're going to scale up this operation? What happens to your shop if all that work goes away, and how you're going to find new work, and what defense work looks like, and what high precision work looks like, and how stamping is evolving over time, and what precision stamping means versus precision laser cutting. Like all of those nuances are really important to understand too. As much of a headache as it sounds, my job is to get deep enough into every one of those holes that my ideas turn out to be really good within my own brain.
Yeah. Yeah. I like both of those for two very different reasons. One, that the idea of that of the square root of n philosophy of as you add people, I think you still see to this day. I definitely see it in defense and in other areas where these small shops still are competitive because these bigger companies, it takes them too much to scale up and to do things, and they have too much overhead associated with that. They can't compete with some of these small shops. That is exactly what you said. They talk to each other in a small building. They don't have to have these really long meetings. They don't have to go and get, well, we have to have a meeting with purchasing, then we have to have a meeting with our sales organization, and then we need to go over here to our our personnel and figure out, do we have enough people to be able to do that? Well, we don't have the right machines. We don't. They understand the fundamental level of what they need to do, and they can take their business. Now that business isn't going to keep going. Their business is where it is, so there is some limiting factors of it, but they can be competitive on their own level because of exactly what you're talking about. I see people all the time getting lost in meetings. And then the other thing, when you mentioned how you have to be able to see the big picture idea, uh, I was at Purdue Northwest, and Mont Handley over there, he developed Pit Moss was his company over there, and he's the I think his title is entrepreneur in residence, and he was one of my instructors over there. And one of the things that I learned a lot from him is having an entrepreneurial brain. Understanding the elements of what it takes to sell your product means you have to understand the different components within, and I say product, and product isn't the right way to say it, selling your business, selling your idea, because when you go out, you have to build that vision for somebody else. Somebody else has to be able to take and understand what you say in all the different components. Why is this important? Understanding that why, I think, like Simon Sinek always talked about, is understanding the why. If you don't understand why you do something, then it's almost impossible for you to convey your ideas because you're dealing with too much focused on the what you do. And you
Yeah.
can never get their buy-in because they don't have an understanding of how it impacts them because you can't convey that. So do you see that same thing for yourself, that you have to be able to convey that to people?
Yeah. I think there's a few cheat codes to this. The first is just like one easy way to shortcut this is to think big enough that it has to be outside of yourself. I think a lot of times people's why is too inside of themselves. They just want to make money or they want to be famous or whatever it may be. One cheat code is just making it something that isn't about yourself. It's about the entire ecosystem, or it's about something a little bit more grandiose. And I think we're afraid to dream big because, we like to be humble, and I think that humility is not the same thing as being able to dream as big as your team is able to execute. And I think when you assemble a really good team and when you have a really good understanding of what you want to go, dreaming as big as possible is the job of the entrepreneur. I think a lot of entrepreneurs dream a little too small and maybe underestimate themselves. And one really easy cheat code is dream large enough that it has to involve your customers and it has to involve your vendors and it has to involve your partners. And all of a sudden, it's really easy to convey that idea because there's instantly something in it for them. There's something they're going to
Yeah.
benefit from. So I think that that's a cheat code. And I think another cheat code is just that um, people want to be a part of something. I really remember when I first started understanding manufacturing, there was almost always the same rough architecture to every shop. There's obviously a shop floor, there was an office, and in between it, there was bathrooms and break rooms and whatever it is in kind of that threshold. And there's almost always a hallway. And on that hallway, there were these framed photos of like some spaceship or like a Caterpillar backhoe or whatever the component that they made was. It was always really striking to me that people always have like a showcase of like things that they've CNC'd or things that they've bent and things that they've made. There's this pride in like we make things that are useful that are in the real world. And it really showed me that manufacturing isn't just about making parts. It's like, what is this part used for? And I think we went through a period of time where we're just like, just get to just-in-time inventory. Who cares what it's made for? Get your part count the right part count, get your scrap rate down, blah, 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 blah. We're like managing by numbers. And I think we're seeing a return towards, no, no, no. You're a really important part of the supply chain that allows for us to make data centers that are going to get launched into space. You're really an important part of this, water jetting thing that the only way that we can get a piece of plastic and a piece of cloth and a piece of metal that's necessary to get a fusion reactor to work is this one water jetting process, or like this stamping process is the only way we can get the volumes that we need to bring the cost down so that everyone can have this particular device for a much lower cost. Like these types of things, people just generally gravitate towards. It doesn't matter what your, background is. When you start explaining what something is for, people's brains just start to listen. And so I think
Right.
connecting people to the end goal, how are you going to be a part of this future, is another really great way of kind of including people. And I think it's already happening whether you want it or not. The excuse that I have to give myself is that I'm not manipulating or controlling people. I'm just trying to pull the future into the present in as ethical and as beneficiary of a way as possible. AI is going to be implemented with these larger businesses. And like you said earlier, these larger businesses leave a lot of room for smaller businesses to take market share because they're so difficult to coordinate. Well, once these AI systems make a larger business operate as if it's a smaller one, well, the smaller shops need to implement the same technologies in order to survive. And so who's going to do that? Who's going to hire the AI engineers, build infrastructure that costs tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars? Well, that's what we think that we're here to do. If we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. It's an important thing to do, but this is going to happen. You're going to see more competition from larger businesses,
Yeah.
and you're going to say, how are they able to make these lead times? How are they able to do this? Well, they've spent the millions of dollars to go implement AI themselves. I think this is really the thing that we're here to do. We're not here to convince people that's going to happen. We're here to be ready for them when it does, and we're here working really hard so that we're ready. That by that point in time, we don't need another year to go deliver that because that year might be catastrophic. We need to make sure that we're ready with the technology the moment the market needs it, and I think it's happening really quickly. So, yeah, like communicating it is kind of a weird thing. Like you're a little bit more of a steward of the future than you are like evangelizing something that you want to come true. I think the people that just want to get rich or want their future version of reality to be the one that's going to happen, I think they actually have a harder time because people are naturally resistant to being sold ideas that don't benefit them, right? But the truly exceptional ideas that are communicated and sold are ones that you would want anyway, that are going to happen and going to benefit you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very personal. And
Hmm.
that's, I think, a great point of that. Sonny, we are out of time, sir. Thank you so much for being here today.
Of
You've
course.
done a
Thanks for having
tremendous
me.
job. And thank you for your time and your insights. And more importantly, your inspiration, too. So I think that's really a critical element. So Thank you so much for your time. This has been the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast, powered by the Precision Metal Forming Association.